Okay, well, good evening, everyone. My name is Anthony Luscre, Kilo 8 Zulu Tango, and tonight's RATPAC presentation is holiday gifts for amateur radio operators. And by the way, it also includes gifts for birthdays and any other occasion you might have. So the RATPAC would like to wish you all happy holidays. This is the cover of CQ Magazine this month, so I grabbed the picture of the magazine cover. And this is the link for tonight's presentation. This will be available in the document afterward, but if you want to jump in quicker before the document even gets published, AR Gifts 22. There's also some other slideshows I'll be talking about. There's one on buying amateur radio equipment if you're looking at buying something big, a spreadsheet that has a guide to HF and VHF, UHF, and a little beginner station cost estimator that lets you add up all the things you need to get started. So today's presentation is not just for Christmas, but gifts for any holiday or occasion. Not a buying list, more of an idea guide to get you started. By the way, this is not meant as an endorsement of any one product, manufacturer, or vendor. We don't warranty any of the equipment that we're going to display tonight, but we just want to give you some ideas, and assessment of the quality and things is up to you. We're going to talk about radios, antennas, station accessories, some tools, some personalized items, membership and subscriptions, test equipment, and miscellaneous. And we'll also give you some time at the end for you to throw in any gift ideas you have. So you're welcome to either put those in the chat as we go along or save those for the end, and we will have people raise hands and let us know about things that you would like to receive or things you've given as a gift. Before we get started, though, I have a little traditional video here for us all to watch.
'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through 2 meters, not a signal was keying up any repeaters. The antennas reached up from the tower quite high to catch the weak signals that bounced from the sky. The children, technicians, took their HTs to bed and dreamed of the day they'd be extras instead. Mom put on her headphones, I plugged in the key, and we tuned 40 meters for that rare ZK3. When the meter was pegged by a signal with power, it smoked a small diode and I swear shook the tower. Mom yanked off her phones and with all she could muster logged a spot of that signal on the DX packet cluster, while I ran to the window and peered up at the sky to see what could generate RF that high. It was way in the distance, but the moon made it gleam. A flying sleigh with an 8-element beam. And a little old driver. It was too far to tell, but he might have been sent by the ARRL. Then I saw it was Santa, the Santa of hams, on a mission this Christmas to clean up the bands. He circled the tower, then stopped in his track, and he slid down the coax right into the shack. While Mom and I hid behind stacks of CQ, this Santa of hamming knew just what to do. He cleared off the shack desk of paper and parts and filled out all my late QSLs for a start. He ran copper braid, took a steel rod, and pounded it into the earth till the station was grounded. He tightened loose fittings, resoldered connections, cranked down modulation, installed lightning protection. He neutralized tubes in my linear amp. Never worked right before, now it works like a champ. A new low-pass filter cleaned up the TV. He corrected the settings in my TNC. He repaired the computer that wouldn't compute, and he backed up the hard drive and got it to boot. Then he reached really deep in the bag that he brought, and he pulled out a big box. A new rig, I thought, a new Kenwood, an ICOM, a Yaesu for me? An Elecraft, Tentec, or Flex, could it be? If he thought I'd been bad, it might be QRP. Yes, the ultimate station. How could I deserve this? Could be all those weekends I worked public service. He hooked it all up and in record time quickly worked 100 countries, all down on 160. I should have been happy. It was my call, he said, but the cards and the postage will cost a month's rent. He made final adjustments and left a card by the key to Gary from Santa Claus, 73. Then he grabbed his HT, looked me straight in the eye, punched a code on the pad, and was gone. No goodbye. I ran back to the station, and the pileup was big, but a card from St. Nick would be worth my new rig. Oh, too late, for his final came over the air. It was copied all over. It was heard everywhere. The ham Santa exclaimed what an old ham expects. Merry Christmas to all, and to all, good DX.
So hopefully now we have you in the gift giving mood. So we're going to talk about how you can get the type of gifts you want, and I'm going to politely suggest gifts that you want to the significant others that might be getting those gifts for you. So you might want to have them watch this presentation. You might want to let your significant others know that ham radio surprise gifts can often be the wrong items. If they insist on surprises, have them talk to a trusted ham friend. Give a list of multiple items to pick from with multiple price levels. Drop unmistakable hints. See you later for some important information on that. Shop together. Have them even email me at kzt73@gmail.com if they have any questions, and I'll be happy to work with them. So what you don't want is the little Santa outhouse as your gift. So you might be thinking that you want something. So you might want to follow the lead of children around the world and make a list for Santa. Leave print ads for items you want around the house, but make sure there is no confusion on the desired item. Circle, highlight, etc. Send text or emails of wanted items. You may need to provide possible vendors because it's not something you can pick up at the local 7-Eleven. Don't use vague or over-technical jargon, i.e. I want an SDR, an HF rig, slugs for my bird, extended rubber duck, or an IC705. And this is where you have to be very specific, because when you told them you wanted an IC75, they quickly looked up things on the internet and they found that it was only $5.99 for an IC705. It might keep your feet dry, but I don't think you're going to make many contacts with it. So you need to be more specific. So what do you say that you send your significant others to the ham store, DX Engineering? Now, if you're like me and live in the area and know where DX Engineering is located, it's actually located in Summit Racing. So you even have to be careful then, because when they walk in, they might see that even though you told them it was going to be $12.99, they can get it for $6.31. They can get your KBIC 705 pistons. So again, be specific, let them know exactly what you want. Pictures are helpful, and links to the locations of materials. So let's talk about some items now. Stocking stuffers are often popular, and they're something that we consume. Some of these things we consume as hams, so they're nice to have around. Coax connectors and adapters are always useful. If you have a KX2 or KX3 from Elecraft, one of these little fancy double plug MEL BNCs will let you hook up 2 wires and use it as an antenna right on the antenna jack. If you're getting SMA adapters to BNC or PL259 for using alternative antennas with your HT, be aware there's 4 types. So make sure you find the right SMA variety to work with your particular radio. Good quality electrotape is always good. Make sure you stress the fact that it's good quality and point them in the right direction, or you might end up with dollar store electrical tape. Soda antennas make something called antenna winders. They look sort of like bats. I always think they look like little bat wings, but they are a great way to wind up antennas without kinking the cable, and they're really nice little thing to play around with. A couple of years ago, I found these little plastic carabiners, and I actually bought a bag of 1,000 of these, and I sell them at Hamfest. So if you happen to bump into me at Hamfest, you can pick up a couple very cheap. But they are nice hard plastic, good solid springs, and a bunch of holes to insert wires or rope to string up antennas. They work very well for portable operations such as POTA. Some other stocking stuffers. If you like to work satellites, one of the things I found is I never have enough hands when I'm working satellites portable. Holding the arrow antenna in one hand and turning the radio and using the microphone, that's 3 hands already, so I don't have a 4th hand available for logging. So I simply turn on a small digital recorder, record all my QSOs, then I go back in the shack, transcribe them into the log, and know that I didn't miss the station's call sign, and I can even play it back a couple times if necessary. If you hunt grid squares, you might like this little Garmin GPS watch that has a grid square locator on it. Or you might like a simple watch with a compass on it. This also has an altimeter. This is actually what I just took off my wrist right now and set on the counter. I've had 2 of these and I really like them. There's a ton of apps available for phones, both iPhones and Androids, and I have multiple lists. By the way, in this presentation, whenever you see this sans serif font, I'm sorry, the serif font in italics with this little symbol, that means it's a link you can open up. So here's information on some apps for phones, and I actually have four different lists of them. And these are only a couple bucks each, so they're very inexpensive little stocking stuffers. If you like to operate FT8 or FT4 and you don't going to be somewhere where you don't have an internet signal to keep your time synchronized, a little USB GPS that you can plug into your laptop is a quick and easy way, under $12, and you can keep everything, your time synced perfectly. You can also use it for location purposes. I've been using Anderson Power Pole since the mid-'80s, so I've went through many of these, so I never mind getting a dozen or so in my stocking stuffing. If you don't have decent crimpers, this is the time you might want to suggest that as one of the items. And then another little thing I found, and I bought these separately, are these little, what they call housing covers, but they're basically little rubber boots. The end of it is sealed, so you cut the hole to match the wire size you have, slide it over the wire before you put the connectors on. Once you put the connectors on, you slide it back over the edge of the connectors, and it gives you a moisture resistant seal. This is a suggestion from W6DQ, Dennis. It's a crimper kit with very specific bits for all different types of crimps to make sure you get the exact type of crimp that the connector needs. And this is a, there's a link for this on Amazon for this crimping tool. I always like to carry a Swiss Army knife with me, but because I like to do radio work, I always want this one feature, and that is the pliers. Not only is it a set of pliers, it also has a small wire stripper on it, and it also has a small crimper on it. It's not anywhere near as that crimper I showed you earlier, but it can work in the field. The other thing is I'm hesitant, but I'm willing to give up the corkscrew for a real Phillips head screwdriver with a lot of torquing capability. So that's on this particular one. But if you still need the corkscrew, you can get this other model here. Also like the scissors a lot, and I've cut plenty of copper wire with these scissors. They'll cut thin wire very easily. You can, if you are getting something like this from Victronox, you can get it personalized with your call sign, either on the blade engraved or on the case. And you can also get different color cases if you'd like. I prefer the red myself, but you can get any of these different colors. If you're going for something a little more substantial than a stocking stuffer, and you're looking for a radio, you have a large choice of VHF and UHF radios and HF radios out there. There's a ton of different HTs, and unlike a few years ago when there was only analog HTs, we now have D-Star, Fusion, and DMR. So there's really 4 flavors of HT out there, not even counting which bands they're going to be on. So you need to be very specific when you're looking at this. I picked up one of these FT65s last Christmas for myself, and I really like the radio. If you want to kick up your power a little bit, either in your car or at home, a mobile radio is always a good way to go. And you can read through and watch the series that we did earlier this year. Marty and I did a series in August or July, I forget exactly what it was, on getting started with VHF and UHF, where we talk a lot about radios and antennas and getting set up with that. Now, this was Dan's choice for a gift that he was interested in. This is called the DV Megacast Multimode IP Radio, and it does all varieties of DMR, D-Star, and Fusion. It comes with a microphone. You connect it to your Wi-Fi at home, and you can get on the air without one of these radios, and you can actually get to all the different types of radios with this. And there's a link here for more information on it. If you're looking at HF, you can go all the way from the Flex 6400 or down to the under $60 without the case QRP single band mini CW only radio. But there's a whole wide variety out there, and there's some new radios that have came out in the last couple of years that are very attractive, both price wise and performance wise. If you're shopping for a transceiver, I suggest a couple things to decide on which model you want. Ask trusted friends, but remember, they will be more likely to favor the rig kind that they already own. So take their advice with a grain of salt in that respect. There's also EHAM product reviews, ARRL product reviews. There's a number of YouTube videos out there. And then also you can go to the manufacturer's sites, and I have a link in the spreadsheet that I'll show you in a few minutes that takes you to each of the manufacturer's sites for more information. This is the spreadsheet I'm talking about, and it's part of my presentation on Tiny for buying amateur radio. So tiny.cc buy AR brings up a whole slideshow. You can also find the recording of this. I've done this a couple times with the recording, and it goes through buying different equipment. One of the features in it is this spreadsheet of different radios. I also put together a little starter guide spreadsheet on estimating the cost of putting together a station at a new hams location. So there's a lot of things to think about if you're going VHF, UHF. We talked about handheld, mobile, or base, full featured or bare bones, analog or digital. And then when you go digital, what kind of digital do you want? Is it FM only, or does it have single sideband and CW on it? Mostly that would be beneficial if you're doing contesting or working FT8 or working weak signals. So again, take a look at our presentation. It's a 3-part presentation on Beginner's Guide to VHF, UHF. You can find it in the RATPAC listings. We also did one, I did one with Dennis, W6DQ, in October on HF. So again, we have all 6 of those videos that you can watch on the RATPAC site. By the way, those videos are our gift to you for the holidays. You can look through those when you have some downtime. This is part of the spreadsheet. And I actually have to, why didn't the spreadsheet come up here? 1 second. There we go. So this is the spreadsheet I was talking about. The first tab on the bottom is an HF rig matrix, and it has radios that are either currently available or have been discontinued in just the last couple of years. And it has information on which bands they cover, features that they have, and even typical prices and discounted prices that they've been available for, or used prices if it's been around for a while. The next tab is HF radios going back many years. You can go through all these different used radios. I have a similar matrix for new mobile VHF, UHF radios also in that. Kits might be one thing you might be interested in. You might even want to build a kit for a transceiver. And I mentioned the QRP Labs QCX Plus. They have both the Plus and the Mini. Both of those are available as kits or pre-built. 50. Okay, why did this happen? Had another day too. Let's make sure. I have to fix that link. Fortunately, it's easy to put in QRP Labs. So the first one is the QCX Plus. It is $55. The case itself is additional. You can find out more information on it. It's not very big. It's a single band. In other words, mono band, CW only, transceiver, 5 watts, but it's very high performance, and it's a great little kit. It's not that difficult to assemble. I wouldn't use it as a first starter kit, but it is a lot of the components that are surface mount are pre-installed for you, so you're mostly doing the through-hole installation. Now, in addition to the QCX Plus, they also have the QCX Mini. And the thing about the Mini is the Mini has even more of the parts pre-soldered on the circuit board. And it's also a lot smaller. As you can see from this picture, it fits in the palm of the hand very easily. And this is what the inside looks like when you're assembling it. And as I said, some of these surface mount parts have already been installed for you. Okay. But there's a wide variety of other kits out there, and there's a number of YouTube videos on kit building. So if you're just thinking about getting started in kit building, it's not too late. You can still do it. Even though Heathkit is not around, there's plenty of good kits out there that you can consider putting together. One of the things you might want to consider for your HT is an antenna to extend the range. And the way to do that is with an extended or foldable antenna. And this is something that you can do. Again, make sure you find the right connector to match your particular model of radio. If you even want better performance, for just a little over $100, you can pick up a multi-band VHF, UHF base antenna. They don't take up a lot of space. They have their own built-in ground planes, very easy to assemble, and it's a great way to really boost your signal. If you're thinking about using your HT or your other VHF equipment for satellites, you might want to consider either the Arrow or the Elk antennas, satellite antennas. These are something that you can use for making satellite contacts. Other antenna information. I originally put together this little guide for Field Day in 2020 when people were doing Field Day on their own, and it started off as just a single page. But what's happened now is it's grown into a full guide on different types of antennas, pros and cons, and then links on different varieties of antennas, both home-built and commercial versions. I also have a slide presentation on portable operations, and in there's a lot of things, including antennas, but there's also other things such as power, resources, backpacks, things of that nature. So there's a lot of gift ideas there that I did not have time to pull out and include separately in this, so you can watch the portable operations presentation on the RATPAC videos. Now, Dennis W6DQ, his Christmas dream was to go back in time and be able to purchase one of the Telerex Christmas tree antenna arrays. These are monoband antennas, but there's 3 of them. So instead of having a tri-band beam, you have a tri-band array with all the full features of a monoband antenna stacked like a Christmas tree, and then you rotate the whole shaft with all the antennas on it. Station accessories. There's a wide variety of station accessories you might want to consider. Some things for your computer. The computer is an integral part of the shack, and you might want to add some things to it, or just get a new computer to do your logging with. Also, you may want to just add an extra monitor. I have 3 monitors here in the shack. The 3rd monitor is actually a small HDMI TV that I picked up very inexpensively. I wouldn't want to do text on it because it's small text doesn't appear that great, but it's great to have above my head for things like multiplier list, maps, other things I can display that are not real detailed. You may also want to consider an extra monitor to plug into your radio. If you just recently picked up a Yaesu FTDX10, for example, if you have a DVI input on your monitor, you can hook it up and have the band display on your monitor. I have one of these lit keyboards. You can change the colors on it. It's real nice. Typically, when I'm in the shack, I only have the lights on from the radio dial and the computer screen. So that's sometimes I need to take a look down and make sure I'm on the right key so I don't send the wrong macro during a contest. Or you may want to even automate your station more and use something like the Stream Deck, which lets you bring up specific applications on your computer. Or the Genovation keypads, which can be programmed to run things like the Elecraft K3S you can program this with that. So these are a number of things you can use for automated some of the operations in your shack. A lot of the newer radios have the ability to have memories and other functions handled with an external keypad. Now you can buy one of these, or you can also make your own. Most of these are basically resistor matrices inside of them, and I have a whole article that I wrote for QST magazine a few years back in the my digital column in QST on building these for ICOM, Yaesu, and Kenwood. This is from Dennis, and it's a remotely controllable power station, so you can turn on and off power circuits remotely. Now, if you're into CW or into collecting keys, keyers, bugs, paddles, etc., the list of possible Christmas gifts is endless. Everything from an inexpensive 3D printed keyer paddles to something such as a Bengali gem that's pretty much a work of art in addition to being a fabulous key. There's information on keys on the CW Ops page and also on the Morse Code Manufacturers page on DX Zone. There was a series of Morse Express Christmas keys, but I think the last time they came out with a new one was 2019. I don't think they're still putting out new ones each year, but they were little tiny keys and very cute. And they're still available some of the previous years. So if you're interested, they still have some of them available for different years in the past. If you're just thinking about learning CW, the Morris Reno 32 is a microprocessor based learning center for CW that also includes integrated paddles. You can also plug a stray key into it. It can be used to send practice to you. You can use it as a keyer for your radio. You can actually, if you have two of them, use the built-in antenna and send wirelessly to the another Morris Reno, or you can use it to connect to Wi-Fi and connect to a server where you can connect other people and do online practice with your Morris Reno. We have a whole presentation again on RATPAC on the Morris Reno, so take a look for that. Having a clock in the shack that you can set the UTC, GMT is always great to have. Some people like digital, some people prefer analog. And many of you might have envied that shack that you saw where the person had the geocon, the mechanical geocon, which had moving parts that simulated a display of the areas that were in sunlight and the areas that were in darkness. Geocon now has a software-based type of device. You plug it into an HDMI TV, it's just this little box here, and it lets you simulate the mechanical geocon, but with a lot more vivid colors. You can also have special features. You can add and remove things. You can have weather. You can have cities, and they're always coming out with new updates for it. So it's something that you might want to consider for your shack. It's not real cheap, but it's not nearly as expensive as buying a mechanical geocon. As I mentioned earlier, for station accessories such as battery power, if you like to operate POTA or SOTA or other things like that, I have a whole slideshow on portable operations along with the video recording for RATPAC. Now, one of the things you might see batteries advertised as solar generators, and I consider that sort of a misnomer. What they really are is battery packs that use a solar panel to charge them with. But the thing is, a lot of them have inverters included. They provide multiple voltages. They're very convenient to carry. There's a wide variety of them out there, and you'll find that they break down into two various types. Some of them are lithium ion, and some are lithium ferric phosphate. I prefer the lithium ferric phosphate. Even though they're a little more expensive, they have a much longer potential lifespan for the number of recharges, and I think they're a stabler type of battery. I have two examples here, and there's tons of these out there to go look at, so don't just assume one of these two. The first one is a very inexpensive one, 204 watt hours, but the sine wave from the inverter does not a pure sine wave, so it might not operate all devices. The second one has a pure sine wave peak inverter in it, so you could plug something into this, or you can run it on AC, or you can use the DC outputs to run the radio. Again, whenever you're looking at batteries, be aware of what they're basing the watt hours, amp hours on, because quite often they choose the lowest voltage. That would result in the highest number. So a lot of times if they have 5-volt output, they'll base it on 5 volts as opposed to 12 volts. Just make sure that you know how they're calculating that to compare things. There's a new type of power bank, and power banks were originally those little things you would get to go along with your cell phone. And they've gotten a little more involved over the last couple of years. They've came out with a new type of power bank. It's called USB-C PD, or power delivery. The USB-C PD devices can put out multiple voltages, and they respond to the devices plugged into them, and they deliver the right voltage based on that device. So a lot of phones have the ability with their USB-C connector to connect to these devices and charge much faster. One of the nice things is you can also buy adapters to plug in, so if the device is not smart that you're plugging in, such as an amateur radio, this cable will act as the thing that sets the voltage. So this particular cable is designed to give 12 volts out when you plug it in, so it'd be perfect for operating a KX2 or KX3. Here's an example of a 65 watt hour power bank, and you plug into this USB-C connector here, or you can use it just as a traditional power bank with regular USB, but picking up this little adapter here will allow it to give the right amount of power. Now, one of the things I've noticed over the years is I've collected so many power banks, power supplies for laptops, power supplies to charge my power banks, etc., etc. And a lot of them don't have the same name on them as the manufacturer of the power device. So what I've done is I've started labeling these little black innocuous cables, my little wall warts, my little adapters for laptops. And quite often they're hard to label because they're black and they're plastic. And You can stick labels on, but the labels fall off. So what I found is I like to use silver Sharpies. And that's something you might want to have Santa put in your stocking. I found this little kit here that I really like. It has 2 silver, 2 gold, and 2 bronze Sharpies, so you can write on all those black devices. Or you might want to consider something like this little cable tagging device here. These use Velcro. You write on them with a marker, and then they Velcro onto the cable. So you can put these on, you can remove them. Or you may want to go with P-Touch label makers from Brother. This is a great way to label cases if you're a home brewer, or to just label things. I like to put a strip across the back edge of my transceiver, HF transceiver, because you can never see what's on the back. If there's 2 antenna connectors, I label them on the top back edge so I know which one is which without having to stick my head behind the radio. Some other station accessories you may want to consider. There's a variety of inexpensive SDR dongles out there, but if you spend just a little bit more money for something like the SDR Play or the Kiwi SDR, you can get really high performance. And I have a whole presentation on online software-defined radios that you might want to look at for more information. Now, I know of a contest station very close to me, K3LR, and Tim Duffy's station is a perennial winner in the CQ Worldwide, another big contest. And he has fabulous antenna farm that I could never match. He has fabulous radios and amplifiers I could never match. But guess what? I had the same exact chair that he has in his contest winning station. And you might not think a chair is very important, but a chair means butt in the seat time. That means you have a chance of winning contests and making a whole lot more contacts. So if you don't have a comfortable chair in the shack, think about getting one. You can look at this model, or you can visit your local office furniture supply for your best fit your needs. We can never have too many tools, and I like this little specialized micro tool set with small blades. It has Phillips straight and Torex heads on it. This is under $10 from Harbor Freight. If you want something that can open almost anything, this has a security bit set. You can tear apart almost any restroom walls. You can also has Torex heads with the little dimples in it, so the safety Torexes can be open. So something like this means you can almost open almost anything. And having a nice set of nut drivers lying on the bench is always convenient instead of having to pick up different sockets or different things. You almost never can have enough side cutters or wire strippers. Remember, side cutters actually wear out over time. You want nice sharp ones. And I actually picked up a pair of these for my mother a couple years ago for a Christmas present. She likes to do crafting. She isn't an amateur radio operator, but she loves to do crafting. And she was using an old beat up pair of pars from I'm not sure where they were from, but I gave her a pair of these and they just cut through things like butter, and she just loves them. There's a variety of wire strippers, basically 3 types. There's the traditional type that comes down, has a beveled edge, you pull the wire through. I've had some trouble sometimes with this a little bit. Then there's the one-handed operation with the dinosaur head, as my kids always called these. And then there's the fancier dual pull. You set it at the right point. When you click on it, it pulls the insulation off. And this is self-adjusting for different wire gauges. Coaxial installation tools. There's a variety of vendors that provide very, very thorough kits for installing either soldered or crimped connectors and trimming the coax just right, all the different labels. A temperature controlled soldering iron can be very useful in the shack, and maybe you already have one, and maybe it's on its last leg, so that might be something you look at. And the prices really came down a lot on these. You can also get a dual device with both a heat gun for surface mount and a traditional iron for it. So there's a variety of solder tools out there. Now, when you start working with small things, magnifiers can be very helpful. You can pick up fairly inexpensive little traditional magnifiers with clips on them, or you can go with a built-in light type, or the type you might want to put on above your head. I like this type a little bit better than the ones that clip because I have glasses and they get in the way of the glasses on mine. But I even like better when I'm looking at small stuff to use one of these little USB cameras. This one is just a camera you have to put a display device on, but some of them actually have a built-in display device. You can either feed it into a monitor or use the built-in display device. And it's actually a great thing if you have kids around for any kind of science project, not just for amateur radio. So if you don't have QSL cards or your QSL cards are looking a little old, you might want to consider personalized QSL cards. I have a whole list here of QSL printers and vendors. These are two QSL cards that I've used for the last couple years. My wood grain and then my train background one. And these, by the way, are from the UX state person. I can't remember his full call sign in UX 5UO in Ukraine. And the last I heard, he's still putting out cards even during the conflict. Some other personalized items you might want are call sign apparel, a hat, a badge, a shirt, etc., are all available, customized. You might even be able to get license plates for your particular state with your amateur radio call sign. They vary in different states. Some states don't have any additional charge. Other states have additional charges and circumstances you have to meet. But consider that for your vehicle. In your ham shack, you may want to have a wooden, plastic or metal call sign plaque. I have one of these light up blue ones in the background here that I normally have on my background. You can't see it because I'm using my special holiday background today. But these are nice little things to have and make great gifts. Another thing you might want to consider is asking someone to pay membership costs for any of these different organizations or services. So if you're not an ARRL member, consider an ARRL membership. Ask your significant other for that. It's not that expensive, and it might be something that could be very useful for you. Also, if you're in Canada, the RAC membership. You might also want to consider joining a specialty radio club like the QRPARCI, the AMSAT Long Island CW Club, and a wide variety of other clubs that you can join for very inexpensive amounts of money and get not only a gift that keeps on giving all year long, but help support these various organizations. You might also want to consider subscribing to a service such as QRZ, and having a subscription to QRZ means you can use it to pull information into logging software and other additional features that you can't do with the free membership. Same thing with EQSL. You get more features if you pay a small amount of money, and I think I'm paying $12 a year and get a lot of extra features on EQSL. eHam, you can subscribe and you get more, quicker access to the online classified ads. And Clublog, even though there's no requirement, you can donate to them to support the really invaluable service they provide. Then there's also magazine subscriptions. I write for CQ Amateur Radio, and if you haven't seen it in the last couple months, I think they're doing a great job of really putting out a high quality magazine on time, actually, for the last 6 months, and it's actually gotten bigger instead of smaller. You can never have too much test equipment. A simple volt ohm meter that allows you to measure DC and AC voltage, continuity, resistance, current, etc. can be very helpful. And you can pick one up from $5 to even higher if you want a little bit higher quality. And I have a link here on information on buying guide for multimeters for beginners. I strongly suggest if you don't have one in your shack already and you operate HF especially, but even VHF, UHF, would be an SWR power meter. Now you can go out and get a lab quality instrument like a bird meter with slugs that you have to choose for each band or power level you want. But you can buy an inexpensive power meter. Now these have an accuracy of about 10 to 15% variation, so they're not extremely accurate, but they are perfectly acceptable for measuring the fact that the radio is putting out a reasonable amount of power. And the SWR meters, because it's relative, are very good. So you can pick one of these up brand new for $80, or you can get a fancier one for $250. You can also go with digital models, even models that talk to you and tell you the SWR or the power. A very inexpensive but very, very useful, versatile tool is a nano VNA. It's called a vector network analyzer, and it's relatively new, under $60. You can measure antenna or coax parameters, SWR, impedance, and loss. You can characterize and tune LCR filters. It's also a very useful tool if you're building and making homemade antennas, filters, or other RF circuits. And I have a presentation here from the Smoking Ape on his YouTube channel on which nano VNA you should buy. And typically what you get is you go up in price, you get a little bit bigger screen. That's one of the main features with the little more expensive ones. If you're a kit builder, or if you just have a lot of parts in your spare parts box, having something like this ESR LCR transistor tester can be very useful. It doesn't just test transistors, it also measures inductance, capacitance, resistance, reactance. It tells you what type of transistor you have, identifies the leads, tests diodes, etc. And it can be very, very helpful. I have a link here on reviews and tests of various ones. Just remember that the inductance isn't laboratory quality, but it'll give you a ballpark figure. That's usually good enough for inductance. Just being able to identify that bargain bin full of transistors you have on the desk, identify which leads are which and what type of transistor it really is, can be very helpful. Consider a book. There's a wide variety of books out there, and if you click on this link that says covers, that says covers because if you click on each of the covers, it brings you to information on that book. So if you click on each of these links, it'll bring up a link on that particular book. And these are some of the books that I think are good for having around the shack. Now you notice I don't have the handbook here. I think I do have the handbook here, but it's not the first book. I have the operating manuals. So if someone's just starting out, I think the operator's manual is a great way to go. Nothing wrong with the handbook, and I think the handbook is very useful. A good book on contesting for beginners from Doug Grant. The Ham Radio for Dummies, you might think would be a dumb book, but it's a really high quality book written by Ward Silver, N0AW. And remember, if you do buy this book, there's also a website that accompanies it with more information than what's in the book. There's a whole series by Andrew Barron on a variety of ICOM and Yaesu radios that he puts together down in New Zealand. And one of my all-time favorites, and you might have to look in the used bin for this, is the Complete DXer by Blob Gloker, W9KNI. If you're an Elecraft person, Fred Cady unfortunately is a silent key, but Elecraft still has the books available, and they are really in-depth, great books that expand on the manuals. Dennis suggested, and he's also one of the authors of Arduino Projects for Amateur Radio by Jack Purdom, W8TTE, and Dennis, W6DQ. Also, Albert and Jack were on RATPAC a little while back, and they talked about their software-defined radio that they put together from scratch, and it's really impressive. It's the T41, and they have a whole book on it. Now, I got a note from Jack recently saying that their new version is coming out March 1st. So if you're thinking about giving this to someone for Christmas, give them an IOU and then pick up the book a little bit later so you get the updated version of the book. That's one of the problems. We're so used to electronic things that now when a book becomes a little bit outdated, we notice it very quickly. Maps and charts for the room are always great. I have a link here for a whole presentation sheet on different types of maps and charts, many of which you can print out for free, but also ones you can buy. So if you're interested in, for example, some of the fine charts and maps put out by the ARRL, you can go on that link to purchase those, and you'll see that you can get a azimuthal globe, a Robinson projection, or a map of North America with the grid squares, among other ones out there. But again, there's a number also here that you can just print up on colored printer paper. I put together one on the Canadian provinces. I have one on the ARRL and RAC sections. So information. You can also generate your own azimuthal map. And this is a great thing to print out, but think about getting your printout at a copy shop where you can get it really big on tabloid paper and then put it in your shack. Now, you might have a ton of QSL cards laying around that you'd like to display. And what I've done over the years is I've scanned a lot of my QSL cards, and I've used different devices such as the inexpensive virtual picture frames, the video picture frames, or I just use them on my third monitor on my computer. I just run them on the top monitor up there, and people can see them when they're in the shack. They'll get it just goes through a whole slideshow and shows them different cards. By the way, that is one of my cards right there. This is something that I would love if anyone knows where you can find one of these. I've never been able to find one again. So this is my gift suggestion for anyone, but I don't know where you're going to find it. I bought this at a Hamfest, and what it basically is it's very similar to most QSL card holders. Each one holds 10 cards on each side, but the thing that makes it unique is you'll notice that these metal arms allow you to swing it out. So it actually holds 400 cards, and you can swing each of the sheets to view them. I tried to take a good picture possible of it, but it's got a wooden fixture here with holes in it, metal brackets, and then these multiple QSL card holder vinyl packets. Maybe you might want to do some some travel with your money instead of buying items. So take a ham radio trip. You might want to consider a trip to the Dayton Hamvention, Orlando Hamcation, or any other regional convention in your area. There's a number of large ones in areas. Or maybe you want to go to the Caribbean and operate some DX. So consider a DX or multiplier vacation, a county rover and a state QSO party with an overnight stay somewhere nice, a staycation, rent time on the air to a remote station. If you want to operate from Maine and try and work 160, rent some time on a Maine station. Now, what my wife and I do each year is we try and combine field day with a vacation, and we also try and mix in trains whenever it's possible. So we've actually done a presentation on a number of trips we've taken to various states to operate field day, and you can watch that video of our amateur radio trains at this link right here. Now, Christmas is for kids in many cases, so don't forget the kids out there or the new person, no matter what their age is, that might just be starting to have some interest in amateur radio. This is your chance to try and will them into amateur radio. So I have a whole variety of things here for potential budding hams. Crystal sets, either one you put together or a commercial one. There's a whole group called the Crystal Set Society and Midnight Science books that has information and also parts you can buy. Simple electronic kits, which you can find in a wide variety of places such as eBay. 4 tips for teaching kids how to build electronics. There's a link right here that takes you to that open source document on how to build electronic kits. And this might give you some ideas for some things you might want to buy parts wise for gifts. We have a little project we do when we have groups of kids together. We call it the $2 clothespin key. And basically it's a chunk of wood with a clothespin, some brass tacks, a little bit of wire, a computer buzzer, and a battery. And we build simple Morse code keys this way. Walkie-talkies for FRS is a way to get kids talking on a radio without having to get their license. So you might want to consider GMRS or FRS. Provide them with a code oscillator and get them started with the Long Island CW Kids Morse classes. Long Island CW requires a membership for adults, but for youngsters, it is free to take their Morse classes. So if you're interested, consider that, and you can provide them with a key and a code oscillator so they can get started. Arduinos or other microprocessors are great things for new budding possible hams. And they're also great for seasoned operators. You can buy all these ultimate Arduino kits on eBay or Amazon very easily, and they get a lot of different projects in one. Some books for youngsters. Ada Lace, Take Me to Your Leader is a book that incorporates amateur radio and science fiction. Electronics for Kids is a very interesting book from a gentleman in Finland. And then there's a Electronics for Kids Dummy series book, and The Radio Rescue, which is a fiction book. So there's a variety. I also have the ICOM, Zach, and Max comic books. I have all the links for them, both the color versions and the black and white color your own versions for all of the different 7 Zach and Max comic books. And you might want to consider a license manual if they really get interested. Don't start with a license manual, though. Get them interested first. And the number one gift for youngsters interested in amateur radio is for you to spend quality time with them. Teach them how to solder using simple kits. Do electronics, electricity, magnetics, robotics, microprocessor, etc. experiments and projects with them. Teach them how to tune in stations using your radio and antennas. Then send them home with instructions on how to use free online SDRs, and I have that little link right here. I use this with school children all the time. My link didn't work. I'll fix that. Tiny.cc free RX. It gives them hundreds of highly tunable, highly sensitive, tunable radios around the world they can tune in. And you'll be surprised, most kids never tune a radio. So just the whole idea of tuning a radio is going to be very unique to them. Oh, by the way, if you don't live near the kids that you want to work with them on Zoom or Google Meet. There's no reason you can't do just like we're doing and have interactive two-ways discussions showing them how to solder or do things remotely. Finally, consider giving back with gifts to the ham community. Consider donating unused equipment to your local club, school club, etc. to be used by new hams or sold to fund club projects. Sponsor a Young Hams visit to the Contest University, a DX convention, or the DXpedition, including the YOTA, the Youth on the Air DXpeditions. Support online ham services like Clublog. Serve your local club as an officer. Do presentations for local clubs or utilize online means to reach clubs worldwide. And I've passed the 275 mark. I think I'm approaching the 300 mark for my presentations to clubs since the beginning of COVID. Write a newsletter article for your local radio club's newsletter. I'm sure your editor would be thrilled. That'd be a giant gift you could give them at this holiday season. So that comes to the end of my list. So what we'd like now is for you to share your wish list or items you have either been glad to receive with the group. Please share gifts that you would like to have or received in the past or gifts you have given. So please feel free to put that in the chat, and Barry and Diana will be monitoring that, or raise your hand and I'd be happy to try and answer questions in person.
Want to lower your desktop?
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, hands up. Wait a minute. Barry, what we got there in chat?
Well,
it's a section on a map with about 500 line of sight and a well-populated environment, but I really don't understand what that is.
I think he wants the possibility of having endless contacts with a limp noodle from a super great ham location. So Victor, hopefully you can get that for your Christmas gift. Anyone else, please feel free to either raise your hand or type in chat. And while we're waiting for you to do that, we're going to ask Dan what I sent him off to buy today when he actually read my presentation. So what'd you buy today, Dan?
Originally, it was thought that maybe Anthony couldn't make the tonight or was going to be late. So he asked me to give the presentation. I'm very glad he made it. He has lots of personal things that he adds and subtracts and makes it a presentation a lot better. But in the process, I went through the presentation and I happened to click on a link and it took me to a site for QRP stuff. And I have a IC 705 and I'm geared it up to do some parks and on the air stuff. And holy cow, there was stuff there that I've been looking for. Cost me $100.
By the way, that is the QRP cat by Tom Witherspoon that he does. You can sign up and get his email each day. But today's issue was on different sites. I'll bring that up here real quick on the shared page. While we're waiting, though, please add items to the list, and I will try and find this link again.
Jed makes up coax jumper cables to give to others. That's a great gift.
That is a great gift. That's the gift that keeps on giving, and it really shows. That's a really personalized gift. That's like baking something for someone, but you have a long-term gift. So this is the what I was talking about. This is the presentation. This is the website of Tom Witherspoon. I forget his call. He's a 4. I think he's a K4. I can't remember for sure, but he has something called QRPer.com. And if you sign up on his website, you'll get an email reminder of when he does post. And he has a few field radio gifts for less than $100. And there's a lot of really good suggestions here. I didn't want to duplicate them, although some of them do duplicate some of the things I have. And this is a gift I got the year before last, and I really do like it. One of these arborist actual throw lines with the real arborist rope on it. I didn't get the little bag. I made my own bag, but it's really nice. It makes a big difference as opposed to the rope I was throwing in the trees that always got stuck. So these are some of the things he's talking about, and he has a wide variety of antennas, keyers, and etc. And then people have been adding their own items to it. So again, that's available. Anyone else out there?
Well, hang on. Because that wasn't the site that sucked me in. I got to go off and find the site that sucked me in.
Oh, okay. So from Richard David Thomas, shortly before he became a silent key, I bought my father, Boyd Thomas, an Echophone EC1 receiver that I got for him on eBay.
Good evening, and welcome to the Snohomish County Health Department Digital Web Taping.
And that brings up a good point there, Richard. eBay gives us a really chance to go back and live some of our childhood memories. So sometimes the Christmas gift you were hoping to get under the tree when you were 16 or 18 or 10 might be still available out there as a used item. And I know that sometimes that can be a great thrill to get something, especially if it's something in really good working condition. Sometimes it requires a little bit of work on your part to get something ready for someone else, but it can be a great way to do to get something and to bring back great memories. You're very welcome, Greg, on doing the sessions. Love to do it. And again, it probably cost me a little bit of money too. I'm not going to say that too loud because my wife's on the other side of the room.
Okay, soda beams is what I was referring to.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Lots of
that was on my slide.
Yes.
Very good. Anyone else out there? Yeah. Okay, Barry. I'll keep watching because I know your audio was cutting out there, so no problem. Well, I actually got done. Did you notice that, Dan? I actually got done in less than 60 minutes.
Well,
I know we've echoed over a little. We went over a little bit here, but
considering that you had to do the 50-yard dash to get there.
well, it was our club's Christmas party tonight, and I invited the speaker, so I didn't want to leave too early. I have another gift for everyone tonight. I have a second presentation that's very, very short. So it's called Santa Comes Through for an Early Farm Christmas, or the Mystery of the Toy Train. When our kids were growing up, we had something called Farm Christmas. Now, it might sound like a holiday TV special, a Hallmark Channel holiday rom-com, or maybe it's that album you get at the local tire dealer. Something like Glenn Campbell or Loretta Lyng singing Christmas favorites. But it's none of these. This Farm Christmas started with my wife's family. My wife's mother grew up on a farm. It was a small farm in western Pennsylvania. It wasn't really that far from everything else, but it wasn't really close either, and the roads leading up to it were rather primitive. After we were married, and I asked my wife for the roads' names, she said, "There's no name for the roads, so just turn right at the Grange Hall, then turn again at the cemetery, and then turn again at so-and-so's house to get to my grandma's." So from the very early days of my wife's family, when the kids were little, my future father and mother-in-law would arrange for Christmas to be on a good weather weekend so that it was easy to travel to the farm. They called this Farm Christmas. Of course, Farm Christmas is exciting because that means Christmas will come before December 25th. And when you're a kid, a Christmas is great, but an extra early Christmas is even better. Skip ahead 20 years, and my wife and I were now celebrating Farm Christmas with our young children. You might ask, why did we have a Farm Christmas? We lived on a suburban lot on a cul-de-sac, and this street even had a name, so there was no need for the same type of Farm Christmas. But the reason we did is I worked in a hospital laboratory, and those that work in healthcare realize that we don't close down for weekends or holidays. So to have our family Christmas with Santa's gifts, we decided to continue the tradition of Farm Christmas. Santa is, of course, full of magic to make Christmas happen for children around the world. And of course, you know that Santa is awful busy on December 24th, so he doesn't mind spreading out his deliveries on some other days of the year, we told our children. So by 1991, our family had continued Farm Christmas for over 7 years. By now, our 8-year-old son had severe doubts about Santa. We were sure that he would certainly tell his 5-year-old sister the story that there was no Santa Claus. It now seemed like it was the perfect time for a little bit of magic on the part of the parents. My wife and I made plans before I left for work on that Saturday morning, about a week before Christmas, that maybe this evening would be an excellent time to have Farm Christmas after I returned from work. Our plan for the evening included a little parental deception. Linda would take the kids out on a few errands in her silver Cavalier station wagon, by the way, and I would arrive home from work a few minutes early, and I would then prepare the house for our farm Christmas. I purposely left the garage door open, started a fire in the fireplace, and laid out gifts from Santa. I then got back in my car and drove to the end of the cul-de-sac where I could watch for their return without the kids seeing my vehicle and listen on 2 meters for Linda's cue. She would say, "This is K8ODP listening," and I would know she was ready for me to follow her here into the driveway. After they pulled into the drive, I arrived a few seconds later. I immediately exclaimed to my wife, within earshot of the kids, "Why have you left the garage door open?" She claimed, "I didn't leave it open." As we entered the house, the fireplace was just inside the door. I again asked my wife, maybe even with a little bit of fake scolding in my voice, "Why would you leave the fireplace burning when you are away from the house?" During these questions, the kids were visibly confused. When they left, they knew there was no fire in the fireplace and remembered Mom closing the garage door. Their confusion was compounded when they saw the lights lit on the tree and the presents on the floor. My son's first words were, "Who left the train running under the tree?" It was evident by the confused and joyful look in his eyes that our simple parent trick seemed to have worked. Santa's magic would continue in the Lusky household for at least one more year. Later that evening, after the exhausted kids went to sleep, after another farm Christmas, my wife and I marveled that our tricks had worked. As we went through the happenings step by step, I asked Linda, "Why did you leave the train running under the tree?" She responded, "I assumed that you had turned it on." I said that it wasn't me. "Who was it then?" she said, as we both stared at each other. The question remained a mystery, as we obviously were not responsible for all the magic of Farm Christmas that year.
Very good.
Thank you. It's
Hey.
actually a true story.
We'll leave that in the presentation. We'll add it to the back. That's a nice gift for us this year. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, let's look around for some more. I'll stop the spotlight here. Are there any questions?
I'm not sure if Stephen has his hand up there.
Well,
If you do,
check. No, I don't see Stephen's hand up. Steve,
actually, I think he has his rule hand up, maybe. If you do, go ahead and unmute if you had your hand up, Stephen. Maybe not. Anyone else?
It wasn't me, but I enjoyed that story.
Well, you're very welcome. Thank you, Diana. Well, I think that's it for tonight.